how police officers would treat an investigation that would lead them to the house of a person that they suspect may have been drinking.
Sure. So typically what would happen is we would get a 911 call from a member of the public who has, in the course of their travels, observed a vehicle that they're concerned about. Usually it's swerving or some other kind of poor driving that's drawn their attention. It gets called in typically as a possible impaired driver. So now that we're looking at a potential criminal offense, we have to follow it up. If we get a license plate, which is preferred, we then have the address for that car. So the officer will usually check the area, see if they can locate the vehicle in motion, and if that fails, then attend the house of the registered owner. At that point, we would knock on the door, especially if the car is in the driveway, and hope to have a conversation with the potential driver, because at this point we don't even know who the driver is. At that point, if we're not allowed into the residence, or if there's no answer at the door and there's a lack of any kind of exigent circumstances to enter the house, then that's truly the end of the investigation. So people concerned about us, kicking in doors or forcing our way in with breathalyzers and conducting tests, that's just not the truth. We won't be doing that.
Can you clear the air again and just explain to people that these laws aren't new? The powers that you have, you've already had this power?
Right. So the majority of our authorities under the old legislation haven't changed with the new legislation being brought in. The only two real changes that are of significance to the everyday traveler are the mandatory alcohol screening, meaning that we can screen people at the side of the road with roadside devices without having suspicion first, and then the new offense of being over the legal limit within 2 hours after completing your commute. Those are the only two changes that are of any real significance. There are lots of minor changes to procedures and forms and so forth, but those are the only changes of real significance.
And the 2-hour rule would be for someone who you suspect may have been in an accident or who may have a reason to be checked on.
Right, so it's that reasonable expectation of whether they should have been, or whether they ought to have expected to perform some sort of test for the officer. So a collision is a pretty simple example where you're involved in the collision, you are required to report it to police and do any subsequent testing. But examples of bad driving, a minor traffic offense, well then it kind of enters that gray area of what is actually a reasonable expectation of having to perform tests for the officer.
All right. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's good. We've pretty well covered it.